Imagine lying in bed.
Right.
You are just staring up at your ceiling.
Yeah, completely exhausted from the day.
Exactly. The city outside your window is finally like humming at a low, manageable frequency. It's quiet.
A rare moment of peace.
Right. And then you hear it.
Oh no.
The aggressive, grating whine of an electric power drill just tearing through the drywall. And it's inches from your head.
Oh, that is the absolute worst.
You can literally feel the vibration in your teeth. You can almost smell the plaster dust coming through the paint.
It's like they're drilling directly into your skull.
Yes. And in that moment, you harbor a very specific, like intensely fiery rage toward the person on the other side of that wall.
Oh, completely justified rage, I mean.
But here's the bizarre reality of modern life that we're digging into for today's deep dive. You live a fraction of an inch away from this person.
You share a literal physical boundary.
Right. You hear their alarm clock go off every morning. You smell the garlic they fry for dinner. You hear that muffled bluish glow of their late night television.
You know all their intimate habits.
But, and this is the crazy part, if you were to pass them on the street tomorrow morning, waiting for the same bus, drinking coffee from the exact same shop.
You would have absolutely no idea who they are.
None. Zero recognition.
It really is the defining psychological paradox of the modern metropolis, isn't it?
It has to be. I mean, we've never been physically closer to other people.
Right. In the entire evolutionary history of our species, we have never been this packed together. We stack ourselves in these massive vertical concrete filing cabinets.
Tens of thousands of people crammed into a single square mile.
Yeah, but sociologically, the distance between us can feel oceanic. It's staggering.
Because we have to protect ourselves, right?
Exactly. We build these impenetrable social and psychological barriers precisely to cope with that overwhelming physical density.
It's a survival mechanism.
It really is. If you actually acknowledge every single person in a crowded subway car as a complex, three-dimensional human being with hopes and dreams,
Your brain would just short out.
complete sensory overload. You just couldn't function.
So we put on our headphones, we stare at our phones, we essentially turn our neighbors into ghosts.
We do. We actively choose isolation.
Which brings us to today's mission. We are looking at how a buzzing power drill in a tiny Taipei apartment accidentally birthed a massive multimedia empire of loneliness.
It is such a fascinating trajectory.
We've got a whole stack of sources here. We are digging into the 1999 illustrated book Turn Left, Turn Right, or Zhamzum Jiangjush for the Mandarin speakers out there.
A truly iconic piece of literature.
And we're exploring the landmark 2003 film adaptation it inspired, along with all the crazy trivia and award history surrounding it.
Right, because this is definitely not just some fluffy paint-by-numbers romance.
Not at all. It is a really deep study of the agonizing geometry of urban isolation. It became this massive cross-cultural touchstone.
Starting with just a few illustrations and morphing into a blockbuster movie, a television series, and even a stage musical.
A musical. It's wild. But to understand the sheer scale of that cultural footprint, we have to look at the exact mechanism of how it started.
We have to go back to 1999.
Take us there. Set the scene.
So Jimmy Liao, who is a Taiwanese illustrator, was sitting in his Taipei apartment.
Okay.
He was just trying to work, trying to draw, but he was completely paralyzed by that exact scenario you just described at the top of the show.
The dreaded power drill.
Yes, the deafening, relentless sound of a neighbor using a power drill on a shared wall.
Now, if I am in that situation, I am instantly banging on the wall with a broom handle.
Oh, absolutely.
Or, leaving a deeply passive-aggressive note in the lobby. I'm certainly not having a profound artistic epiphany.
Which is exactly why Jimmy Liao is a renowned award-winning artist, and we are just here talking about him.
Fair point, fair point.
Instead of giving into the frustration, he actually let his mind follow a very specific philosophical thread.
He leaned into it.
He did. He sat there just absorbing this incredibly intrusive noise, and he realized the profound absurdity of the whole situation. Well, he realized he was intimately subjected to this complete stranger's life. He knew their renovation schedule, their noise levels, their presence, but they were total voids to one another.
There was ghosts making noise.
Right. He had this realization that if he and this drilling neighbor left their apartments at the exact same time, walked down the same stairs, and passed each other on the sidewalk.
They would just walk right by each other.
They would remain total strangers unless they stopped on the street and explicitly recited their exact street addresses and apartment numbers to each other.
Which nobody does.
Exactly. Otherwise, they would never, ever know that they slept mere feet away from each other every single night.
It is honestly a terrifying thought. Like, for anyone listening right now, think about your own life. If you live in an apartment building, your only real relationship with your neighbors is usually just seeing their cleverly named Wi-Fi networks pop up on your phone.
Oh, that is so true.
You see, like FBI surveillance van 4, and you think, okay, they have a sense of humor.
But you wouldn't recognize them in the produce aisle of the grocery store.
Never. You'd reach for the same tomatoes and just ignore them. So Jimmy Liao took that very specific modern alienation and distilled it into this premise that is just beautifully, brutally simple.
The core premise is this, quote, "She is used to walking left, he is used to walking right. They have never met."
That is devastatingly simple.
It is the geometric foundation of the entire narrative. He creates two people, a man and a woman, living side by side in this sprawling city.
Right.
And because they are creatures of inflexible urban habit, their paths perfectly diverge the second they step out of their respective doors.
Like clockwork.
The man always turns right, the woman always turns left. They are literally repelling each other by habit.
I was looking at these early illustrations from the 1999 book in our source materials, and what really strikes me isn't necessarily the characters themselves, but the architecture around them.
Oh, the city itself.
The city feels like the primary antagonist of the story. It is almost suffocating how big it is.
You are picking up on the exact mechanism Liao uses to elevate this beyond a simple children's picture book.
Because it really doesn't feel like a kid's book.
It isn't. If we analyze the artistic maturity of his sequential art here, it is really a masterclass in visual storytelling.
Yeah, the sources mentioned this was his first time tackling a long-form narrative about adult relationships.
Right, and he essentially co-opted the format of a children's book to deliver this incredibly poignant adult meditation on loneliness.
How does he do that visually?
Look at the page layouts. He frequently uses these parallel panels. He will show the man and the woman occupying the exact same space in the city, say, a specific park bench or a crosswalk.
Oh, but separated by time.
Exactly. Or, conversely, he will show them in completely separate locations at the exact same moment.
So he is visually reinforcing the tragedy of their near misses.
He is constantly teasing the reader.
It's like watching two trains running on parallel tracks. You, as the reader, have this omniscient view. You can see they are meant to collide. They are perfect for each other.
But the tracks are perfectly rigidly set to keep them apart.
And he reinforces that rigidity with his color palette, right? I noticed that right away.
Oh, the colors are crucial. He uses these drab, heavy grays and browns for the towering cityscapes. The urban environment is intentionally oppressive.
It feels very heavy, very concrete.
But then he injects these bright, desperate pops of color, like a red umbrella or a bright yellow scarf.
Right, usually when the characters are dreaming or feeling a fleeting moment of hope.
Yes, and the physical act of the reader turning the page actually becomes a stand-in for the relentless passing of time in a city that just doesn't care if you are lonely.
Wow. That execution clearly struck a massive nerve, because the sources show this book was an absolute juggernaut right out of the gate.
It dominated the market.
In 1999, it basically swept the Taiwanese publishing industry. It won the Esli Bookstore Book of the Year and the Kingstone Book of the Year.
Major awards.
But the thing that truly proves your point about urban isolation being this universal human condition is the international translation list.
The global reach of this book is genuinely staggering.
I am looking at this list, and I really want to highlight the contrast here for you listening. This book was translated into 15 different languages. English, French, Japanese, Korean, German, Thai, Italian, Greek.
Okay, this goes on.
But look at two specifically, Danish and Brazilian Portuguese.
Okay, that is quite a spread.
Think about it. Denmark is a culture that prides itself on hygge, right? On coziness, warmth, and a strong social welfare state.
Very tight-knit social fabric.
And Brazil is a culture famous globally for its vibrant, communal, loud, street-level energy.
Right, completely different climates, completely different social norms.
And yet people in Copenhagen and people in Sao Paulo were looking at these exact same illustrations of a Taiwanese city and saying, yes, this is exactly what my life feels like.
Because the architecture of modern loneliness doesn't actually care about your cultural heritage.
It's universal.
The feeling of being entirely alone in a sea of millions of people translates perfectly, whether you are shivering in a Nordic winter or sweating in a South American summer.
That is so true.
The geometry of habit, turning left, turning right, taking the same subway car every day, that is the universal language of the modern commuter.
And naturally, when you have a property that is this universally understood, with a premise that is basically already a visual storyboard.
It is perfectly primed for a movie.
Exactly. Two people separated by the physical layout of their lives. The film industry is absolutely going to come walking.
Oh, it was inevitable.
But this is where the story takes a massive, counterintuitive left turn. The team that actually brought this deeply melancholic, pastel-colored picture book to the big screen in 2003.
It is quite the twist.
It makes absolutely no sense on paper.
The transition from page to screen for turn left, turn right is honestly one of the most fascinating anomalies in Asian cinematic history.
I still can't wrap my head around it.
First, we have to look at the industry context provided in the sources. The 2003 film adaptation was a monumental milestone. It was the very first Chinese-language film co-produced with the American studio giant Warner Bros.
Which is a huge deal. That is a massive injection of Hollywood capital.
Unprecedented at the time for this kind of project.
I mean, Warner Bros. Is Batman. It's The Matrix. It's Bugs Bunny. And they are throwing their weight behind a Taiwanese picture book about two people who can't figure out how to meet each other at a park.
Right. It signaled a massive shift in global cinema markets. Hollywood was attempting to capture the Asian box office in a way they hadn't fully committed to before.
Okay, so the studio involvement is interesting. But the studio isn't the shocker here.
No, not at all. The shocker is the production company they partnered with, and specifically the directors they hired.
Drumroll, please.
The film was directed and produced by Johnny Tu and Wai Ka-fai.
Okay, I have to stop you there. Because anyone who watches Asian cinema is currently screaming at their device.
It is a shocking revelation for genre fans.
Johnny Tu and Wai Ka-fai, the masterminds behind Milky Way Image, directing Turn Left, Turn Right.
That's the team.
It's like hiring the directors of The Godfather or The Departed to direct your Notebook.
Or hiring a bomb disposal expert to perform open-heart surgery.
Exactly. The stakes are completely different, even if both require precision.
To understand the sheer whiplash of this decision, we need to analyze the filmography of Milky Way Image that our sources detail.
Please do, because it's wild.
In the late 90s and early 2000s, this studio was the undisputed king of hard-boiled, gritty, ultra-violent Hong Kong crime thrillers.
We are talking blood, sweat, and bullets.
They made films drenched in cynical morality, triad brotherhood, and intense violence. The sources list some very specific examples.
Yeah, let's run through them.
There's The Mission in 1999, which is about triad bodyguards protecting a boss.
Classic.
And PTU in 2003, which is a grueling neon-lit nightmare about police tactical units searching for a lost gun in the criminal underbelly of Hong Kong.
Which came out the exact same year as this romance movie, by the way.
Right. And later they did Breaking News in 2004, famous for an uninterrupted, incredibly complex opening shootout. And Election in 2005, a dark, sprawling epic about the ruthless politics of organized crime.
So these directors are famous for their clinical, almost sadistic tension on screen.
Absolutely.
So the central question for our deep dive today is, why on earth did Warner Bros. Or anyone else look at the kings of triad cinema and hand them a whimsical story about a violinist and a translator?
It seems like a recipe for disaster.
You're setting me up, I can tell. Tell me why. Because looking at their resume, I'd expect our two lonely lovers, John and Eve, to pull out handguns instead of umbrellas at the park.
Well, you are missing the crucial mechanism of what makes a Milky Way Image film work in the first place.
Okay, enlighten me.
Johnny Tatao and Wai Ka-fai are not just directors of violence. They are fundamentally obsessed with spatial relationships.
Spatial relationship.
Yes. They are masters of architectural tension. If you look at a shootout in The Mission, say the famous scene in the shopping mall, the tension doesn't come from the explosions or the muzzle flashes.
Where does it come from?
The tension comes from the exact geometry of where the characters are standing.
Oh, wow.
It's all about sight lines, blind spots, the space between concrete pillars, and the agonizing seconds before someone steps into view.
Oh, that is brilliant. I see exactly where this is going now.
They took that exact same obsession with physical space and applied it to a romance.
That is so smart. Turn Left, Turn Right is a story entirely about spatial relationships.
Precisely. It is a story about two people being perfectly, tragically out of sync in a physical environment.
So Tu and Wei took their clinical, precise visual style and used it to amplify the agony of the near miss.
Exactly. When John and Eve miss each other by a fraction of a second at a train station platform, the camera work, the panning, the framing it, is executed with the exact same suffocating tension as an assassin tracking a target.
That is incredible. Their background in crime thrillers actually made them uniquely, paradoxically qualified to capture the suspense of two people constantly failing to meet.
They turned a rom-com into a thriller of misconnections.
And they didn't do it on some fake, manufactured soundstage either. The sources point out that they grounded this hyper-stylized fairy tale in a very tangible reality.
The location scouting was meticulous.
They detailed the specific filming locations, and it operates as this incredible time capsule of early 2000s Taiwan.
It really preserves the era.
They shot at the Beitou Park Fountain. They used the bustling, humending pedestrian area. And there is one detail here from the sources that I just find profoundly poetic.
Taipei 101.
Yes. They filmed Taipei 101, but they specifically filmed it under construction.
Which is a masterful visual metaphor.
Because it would soon become the tallest building in the world.
Right. But by featuring it in a state of incomplete construction, towering over the city with all these exposed beams and cranes, they capture a very specific moment of transition.
A city in flux.
It symbolizes a city rapidly building itself up, reaching for the sky, becoming modern and imposing, while the tiny individual humans on the ground level remain fundamentally unfinished and disconnected in their own lives.
That is beautiful. The city is growing, but the people are stunted by their isolation.
They also went down to Yunlin County to film at the Jianfusun Fancy World Amusement Park, and they used Shuangji Station.
So they built this incredibly specific, suffocating maze of a city.
A maze that feels very real.
Right. But a maze is totally meaningless without the mice. And Tone Wai created two perfectly symmetrical mice for this experiment. Let's talk about the protagonists.
We have John Liu, also known as Liu Jikang. He is played by the deeply charismatic Takeshi Kaneshiro.
And we should note his phone number in the film is 763092.
Right. And we have Eve Choi, or KGE, played by Gigi Loom, whose phone number is 784533.
I know it sounds weird that we were reciting their phone numbers on a deep dive, but we have to mention them because in a film obsessed with mechanics and details, those 6 digits become a literal matter of life and death.
They are the most important numbers in the narrative.
But before we get to the numbers, I want to dig into their professions. Because the sources give us this background, and it speaks so deeply to the modern condition.
Their jobs are tragically ironic.
Let's start with John. He is a violinist. He's this romantic, melancholic artist. But his reality in this city is utterly degrading.
He plays his violin in the plaza, pouring his soul into the instrument.
And the women around him completely ignore the music. They're only there to gawk at his handsome face.
He is totally objectified.
His true passion, his art, is treated as just background noise to his physical appearance.
Now contrast that with Eve.
Yes, Eve's situation is just as bad, if not worse.
Eve is a translator. Her soul belongs to romantic poetry. That is what she wants to spend her life exploring and translating.
But to survive the grinding capitalist reality of Taipei,
she is forced by market demands to translate cheap, trashy horror novels.
It is awful. We see the immense mental toll this takes on her in the film. She is constantly stressed, surrounded by gory, lowbrow text that she actively despises just to make rent. The irony is just suffocating. They are both artists. One makes music, the other works with words. But the city forces them to commodify their art in ways that completely hollow them out.
They aren't just isolated from other people, they are alienated from their own passions.
Think about how relatable that is for you listening. How many people out there are trading the poetry they want to write for the horror novels they have to translate, metaphorically speaking?
It is the ultimate compromise between your passion and your paycheck.
It is a universal struggle, and it makes their profound loneliness feel completely earned. They aren't just moping. The world is actively grinding them down.
And the directors torture them, and the audience, frankly, by emphasizing this shared isolation through the choreography of their near misses.
Oh, the near misses are agonizing.
The film relentlessly puts them in the same frame, separating them by the thinnest of margins. We see John exiting a revolving door in the exact second Eve enters it.
We watch them ride parallel escalators.
Yeah.
They are literally passing each other, but they are facing opposite directions.
We see them on a train platform, separated only by the blur of a passing train.
It is a visual manifestation of so close yet so far, and because it's two-way, it's executed with the precision of a Swiss watch.
It is excruciating tension.
As a viewer, you just want to reach into the screen, grab them by the shoulders, and physically turn them around so they can see each other.
But eventually the film gives us a release valve.
Thank goodness. The fateful afternoon at Bay2 Park.
And the catalyst for their meeting is just perfect symmetry again. They are both fleeing the exact same problem.
Their landlords are hounding them for rent.
All right. They both run away from their apartments, they go to the park to escape, and by pure, unadulterated chance, they end up at the exact same circular fountain.
This sequence is the emotional anchor of the entire narrative. After all the grinding cynicism, the grueling jobs, the near misses, the city seems to finally take a breath and let them exist.
They recognize each other instantly, not from the street, but on a soul level.
They spend this magically sweet afternoon together. They ride the carousel, they sit on the grass, they talk about their dreams and their frustrations.
It's a moment of pure serendipity. The rigid, unforgiving geometry of the city finally breaks down.
But the universe of this film is vindictive.
Very much so.
The inciting incident of the plot drops quite literally out of the sky.
A sudden, torrential downpour hits the park.
They have to scatter. And in the chaotic rush to escape the rain, they hastily scribble their phone numbers on pieces of scrap paper, hand them to each other, and run home.
They get back to their apartments, and they are completely euphoric.
They think they have finally found the antidote to their loneliness, the one person who understands them.
And then they look at the pieces of paper.
The rain has smudged the ink.
It's a complete gut punch.
The numbers are gone.
It is the tragedy of analog fragility. A few drops of water utterly destroy their connection.
The very element that caused them to rush and make a mistake, the sudden rain, is the exact element that washes the ink away, rendering those precious 6 digits completely unreadable. So with the numbers washed away, logic dictates that they just need to bump into each other again. Right?
You would think so.
I mean, they live on opposite sides of the exact same wall. They frequent the exact same park. But this is where Milky Way Image's cynical worldview really starts to bleed into the romance.
The city is no longer just indifferent to them.
No. The city actively, maliciously begins to work against them through 2 very specific, deeply flawed side characters.
This brings us to the introduction of the antagonists, and honestly, a seismic shift in the narrative structure.
What do we have?
The film introduces Ruby, also known as Zhao Hong, played by Terry Kwan. She is a highly enthusiastic, almost manic delivery girl for a local restaurant.
And she is everywhere.
And we also have Dr. Hugh, played by Edmund Chen. He is Eve's former college senior and currently working as a physician.
These 2 are the agents of chaos. And the setup for their interference is, again, another moment of tragic symmetry.
It is New Year's Eve.
Right. John and Eve both fall severely ill in their adjacent apartments on the exact same night.
They order food, and Ruby, the delivery girl, ends up servicing both of their apartments separately.
And meanwhile, Eve's illness gets so bad it sends her to the hospital, where she is serendipitously reunited with Dr. Hugh, who actually becomes her attending doctor.
The complication arises almost immediately. Ruby and Dr. Hugh both develop these intense, obsessive, unrequited crushes on our protagonists.
Ruby fawns relentlessly over John. She is just obsessed with his looks.
And Dr. Hugh becomes entirely obsessed with rekindling a past romance with Eve.
But the narrative hinge turns on a discovery that Ruby makes.
Right. Ruby, because she has access to both apartments through her deliveries, spots the smudged pieces of paper in their respective homes.
She puts the pieces together. She realizes that John and Eve are the mysterious strangers, desperately searching for each other. She holds the absolute key to their happiness. She could literally knock on John's door, point to the left, and say, "The love of your life is right there."
It would take 2 seconds.
But she doesn't. And neither does Dr. Who once he is brought into the loop.
Instead of helping, their unrequited love curdles into this highly toxic jealousy.
They team up. And what they decide to do is, frankly, sociopathic. I don't use that word lightly.
It is a profound psychological pivot for the film. We move from a story about innocent, passive serendipity to a story about active, malicious interference.
What do?
Ruby and Dr. Who hire a private detective.
They pay a professional.
Yes, they pay a professional to tail John and Eve through the city. This detective captures a series of photographs documenting all the times John and Eve miss each other by mere inches. at the cafe, walking down the street, at the park.
And what do they do with these photos?
Mhm.
They put them in envelopes and mail them to John and Eve.
It's so cruel.
I have to stop here, because this isn't just a quirky rom-com misunderstanding. The goal of mailing those photos isn't to say, hey, look how close you are, keep looking. The goal is psychological warfare.
They want to utterly demoralize John and Eve.
They want to prove to them that fate is actively mocking them.
If we look at this sociologically, Ruby and Dr. Hugh represent the chaos, the selfishness, and the noise of the outside world, violently breaking into the protagonist's quiet, symmetrical lives.
John and Eve, even in their deep loneliness, had a kind of balance.
Ruby and Dr. Hugh are the human manifestation of the city's isolating architecture. They are actively building psychological walls between John and Eve to keep them separated.
When John and Eve open those envelopes and see the photographic evidence that they are inches away from salvation every single day and still failing, the despair is absolute.
It breaks their spirit entirely.
I always debate the morality of these two characters with people who have seen the film. Are they evil, or are they just tragically, pathetically human?
It is a blurry line.
You see people acting like this on the internet all the time. Parasocial stalkers, toxic jealousy. It's a bit like a friend hiding your phone because they know the person texting you is bad news.
Except here, Ruby and Dr. Hoon know they are destroying true soulmates purely to serve their own desperate need for possession.
They act out of a primal fear of rejection. They would rather destroy the happiness of the people they claim to love than see those people happy with someone else.
And sadly, their sabotage is incredibly effective. It leads directly to the film's climax.
It works perfectly. John and Eve are so utterly defeated by these photos, so convinced that Taipei is quite literally cursed for them, that they decide to surrender.
They decide to flee the city entirely.
John secures a prestigious audition with an orchestra and decides he is moving to Vienna to bury himself in his music.
And Eve accepts a job offer at a magazine and decides she is moving to America.
The tension here is at its absolute peak. They are packing their bags, they are preparing to abandon the city, and with it, any hope of ever finding each other again.
In a final act of closure, they decide to make phone calls to Ruby and Dr. Who to say their goodbyes.
But Ruby and Dr. Hugh, perhaps driven by a sudden spike of guilt, or perhaps just playing one final twisted trick, have left John and Eve's real phone numbers on their respective answering machines. So John calls Ruby's machine, and he hears Eve's number.
And Eve calls Dr. Who's machine, and she hears John's number.
They immediately dial. But because they are both attempting to call each other at the exact same millisecond, the lines cross.
They get redirected to each other's voicemails.
It is the ultimate technological near miss. They are sitting in their rooms, holding their phones, listening to the recorded voice of the soulmate they have been searching for months.
In an absolute frenzy, they drop the phones, they run out of their apartments, and they sprint into the street.
They're desperately screaming each other's names into the urban void.
But staying absolutely true to the film's cynical geometry, they run down the street in opposite directions.
They fail again. They return to their apartments completely exhausted, thoroughly defeated, and resolve to leave for the airport the next morning.
And this is where Johnny 2 and Y Cafe execute one of the most audacious, jaw-dropping narrative swings in the history of the genre.
It is wild. John and Eve are sitting on the floor of their respective apartments, leaning their backs against the shared wall, weeping.
And suddenly, the ground begins to shake.
The walls violently tremble, bookshelves crash to the floor. The film literally deploys a massive earthquake as a deus ex machina for romance.
We cannot gloss over this because this isn't just a generic tremor.
No, the film is explicitly referencing the 9/21 earthquake, also known as the Gigi earthquake.
For context, this was a devastating real-life tragedy that struck Taiwan in September 1999, which happens to be the exact same year Jimmy Liao's book was published.
It was a 7.3 magnitude quake. Over 2,000 people died. Entire blocks were leveled. Using a national tragedy of this magnitude to resolve a romantic comedy plot, I mean, it feels borderline insane on paper. How do they justify this ethically and narratively?
It is an incredibly bold, heavily debated choice among critics. But if you analyze the thematic structure of the film, it is arguably the only way the story could end.
How so?
The filmmakers had built a cinematic universe where the city itself was an impenetrable, malicious maze. The geometry of their isolation was too rigid for a simple coincidence to break it.
They couldn't just bump into each other at a coffee shop at that point.
No, they needed an event powerful enough to literally shatter the architecture of the city.
The earthquake literalizes the metaphorical wall between them.
Exactly. The tremors shake the very foundations of their isolated urban lives. It strips away the concrete, the drywall, the rules of the metropolis.
And as the dust settles, the shared wall between their apartments has literally collapsed. There was a gaping, jagged hole in the drywall.
They look through the rubble, through the dust, and they finally truly see each other inside their own homes.
They realized they were next-door neighbors this entire time.
They step through the broken wall, they embrace in the ruins of their isolation, and the film concludes.
It is a stunning visual climax. It took the earth literally splitting open to defeat the isolation of the city.
A massive payoff.
But while the collapsing wall gives us the visual payoff we desperately needed, the emotional climax of this film, and honestly a huge part of its lasting legacy in Asian cinema, is carried almost entirely by its sonic landscape.
We have to talk about the music.
Because the musical pedigree of this film is astonishing.
The music is the lifeblood of Turn Left, Turn Right, and the linchpin of that sonic landscape is Gigi Leung.
Who plays Eve?
Yes, she didn't just star as Eve, she was the literal voice of the film's emotional core. She provided the theme songs for the movie in both of its major linguistic releases.
That is so impressive.
For the Cantonese market, she sang Two People's Luck, and for the Mandarin market, she sang the titular track, Turn Left, Turn Right.
She is pulling double duty, anchoring both the visual and auditory experience. And the studio didn't stop there.
No, they brought in heavy hitters.
They brought in Sun Yanzi, who is a massive pop superstar in her own right, to sing the insert song Encounter, or Yujian.
That song became a colossal cultural hit entirely on its own merits. It was everywhere.
But the critical zenith of the film's musical success actually happened at the Golden Horse Awards.
The biggest stage of them all.
The film won the Golden Horse Award for Best Original Film Song for a track titled The Terminal of the Carousel, or Wiswan Munijungduan. The composition was by Chet Lam, the lyrics were penned by the legendary Lin Jie, and it was performed by Gigi Leung.
Winning a Golden Horse is basically taking home an Oscar in the sinosphere. It is the absolute pinnacle of critical validation.
But why is a pop song from a romance film winning this specific award such a systemic shock to the industry? Because the sources emphasize how big of a deal this was.
To understand the weight of this win, we need to take a historical detour through the sources provided regarding the Best Original Film Song category.
Give us the history.
The Golden Horse for Best Song has a storied history of honoring tracks that define entire generations of cinema, but they usually lean towards sweeping historical epics or incredibly heavy dramas.
Right.
Look at the early winners. You have the 1962 classic from the film Love Without End. In 1983, the award went to the agonizingly beautiful anthem from Papa, Can You Hear Me Sing?
Right, and in 1990, it went to Kang Hai Yi Sheng Shao from Swordsman.
A defining wuxia anthem.
That is a song that virtually every single person in the Chinese-speaking world knows by heart. That is incredibly heavy company to keep.
Precisely. And the prestige remains untouched today. If you look at recent years, the 2020 winner was the massive, socially resonant viral hit from Your Name Engraved Herein.
Oh, that song was huge.
And in 2024, it was claimed by the critically acclaimed horror comedy Dead Talent Society.
So, for a pop-driven track from a romance film like Turn Left, Turn Right to take home this award, it signifies that the song transcended simple marketing.
It wasn't just a catchy tune to play on the radio. Critics recognized it as an integral, emotionally devastating piece of cinematic art.
The lyrics by Lin Jie are brilliant. They perfectly captured the cyclical, dizzying nature of the carousel John and Eve rode on their one perfect date, and the terminal, suffocating loneliness they endured afterward.
It really makes you marvel at Gigi Leung's dual threat status.
It's not just that she acts out the heartbreak on screen, she literally sings the thesis statement of the movie. It's her voice playing over the credits that leaves the audience in a puddle of tears.
Her casting was absolutely vital to the film's success. If you look at the trajectory of her career outlined in the sources, you see why she was the perfect anchor.
What was her background leading up to this?
She had been a dominant, certified pop icon in both Cantopop and Mandopop since her 1996 debut album, Love Myself.
She had a huge following.
She released massive hit albums like 2001's Amour and later 2010's Cat, Who Fears Loneliness. She had the vocal power and the built-in fan base to carry a Golden Horse-winning soundtrack.
And she had the acting chops to back that.
Yes, the sources list her working alongside heavyweight stars in major films.
She was in full throttle. She did the action movie Hitman, she was in the romance Tempting Heart, and she held her own in the classic comedy Fat Choice Spirit.
She was the ultimate package for a project that required you to believe in her as a stressed-out translator and be moved to tears by her singing voice.
So, with a star of Ling's magnitude, a soundtrack dominating the airwaves, and a premise that resonated so deeply with the specific anxieties of modern urban living.
This property couldn't just remain a movie.
No, it expanded into a true franchise of loneliness. It exploded.
Jimmy Liao's original concept of the noisy neighbor just kept spinning out into a full-blown multimedia universe.
Right after the movie, the sources detail that in 2004, the story was adapted into a massive TV drama series.
Reaching even more living rooms.
Then in 2008, it was adapted again, this time into a live stage musical, combining the narrative with live theatrical performances.
And its geographical reach continued to expand. The sources specifically note a special 2005 DVD release in Japan that featured Mandarin, Cantonese, and Japanese dubs.
Because it had captured a massive Japanese fan base that had become entirely enamored with the story.
I think we need to dig into why this works across so many mediums.
Yeah, why this story specifically? Because you have Milky Way Image's usual output crime thrillers about triad bosses. You can't easily turn an ultra-violent triad shootout into a stage musical.
Not without a lot of fake blood.
So why does Turn Left, Turn Right adapt so seamlessly to television, stage, and 15 different spoken languages?
Because the core concept, the idea of turning left and turning right, is a universal geometric metaphor.
It strips away the need for highly specific cultural touchstones.
Exactly. You don't need to understand the underworld politics of Hong Kong to understand the frustration of missing an elevator by a single second.
The idea of missed connections, of two paths diverging purely by the rigid rules of habit, works on a physical stage, it works in a serialized TV drama, and it works in translation.
Because it relies on the universal geometry of a city.
It is the math of heartbreak. Everyone, everywhere, understands the math.
It's fascinating to speculate on the lasting, cascading power of Jimmy Liao's original vision.
A simple, fleeting moment of profound annoyance at a neighbor's power drill in 1999 birthed a philosophical concept that resonated for decades.
It touched millions of people, won prestigious awards, and fundamentally shifted how we romanticize the claustrophobic isolation of city living.
Okay, let's bring this all together. We have traced a massive cultural journey today.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started with Jimmy Liao sitting in his apartment in 1999, clutching his ears while his neighbor drilled into the drywall, realizing the tragic proximity of strangers.
We followed that spark as it was handed to Johnny Tu and Wai Ka-fai.
The gritty crime directors who somehow turned it into a hyper-precise, cinematic thriller of missed connections in 2003.
We explored the crushing irony of John and Eve's lives, the diabolical sabotage of Ruby and Dr. Hugh,
And the literal, earth-shattering earthquake that finally tore down the walls between them.
and we celebrated Gigi Lung's golden horse-winning voice that cemented the emotional legacy of the entire enterprise.
It is a remarkable, unpredictable trajectory for a single idea born from frustration.
It truly is.
But I want to leave you, our listener, with a final, lingering question to mull over as we end this deep dive. The entire plot, the entire agonizing tension of Turn Left, Turn Right, hinges on a piece of paper being ruined by the rain.
The smudged ink.
Right. It relies on two people simply not knowing each other's phone numbers. It relies on the ability to be truly lost in a city.
Which is getting harder and harder to do.
Exactly. Think about today. Think about our hyper-connected, inescapable digital world. Our phones track our exact GPS locations at all times.
We leave massive searchable digital footprints wherever we go.
We have facial recognition, reverse image search, geolocation tags on Instagram, and neighborhood social apps where everyone monitors everyone else's doorbell cameras.
The mystery is kind of gone.
Has we completely lost the romantic magic of the missed connection? If John and Eve lived in the year 2026 and they met at that fountain in Beitou Park, would the rain have mattered?
Probably not.
Would they have just found each other on social media by that evening using a mutual connection or a location tag? And if so, is it a tragedy that we can no longer be this beautifully, poetically lost?
It's something to think about.
Next time you hear a power drill coming through your apartment wall, maybe don't immediately check your neighborhood app to see who lives there. Maybe just leave the wall up and wonder,